Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! This story starts in my multimedia class. It's an art class, and this day we were pairing up with partners. I had gotten up to talk to the teacher, and then my friend called me over to ask if we could partner up. I obliged, and we worked for a little while. After a few minutes working on this project, I noticed I didn't have my phone. I walked back to my seat, and clear as day, the $50 I had stashed in my phone case was missing. This $50 was more of a sentimental object, as it was given to me by my stepdad, and it was printed in 1974. After that, I panicked and spoke up to the people at the table if they had taken it, and they all denied quickly. Knowing something was up, I consulted another friend. She knew these people personally and thought they had stolen it too. She then went over and asked. They continued to deny it. I asked the teacher if she had seen it, and she called the school police, and after that class I was sent there. I sat for 2 whole hours. I missed the sevens and had to stay an hour after school. They interviewed the 4 and 2 of them confessed to stealing, but said they didn't have the $50. After that, I got picked up by my stepdad. My stepdad is a money collector, and because of the sentimental value of the bill, he had a picture and a serial number. Knowing these boys were complete idiots, me and my stepdad went to gas stations and stores in a radius of the school, and we asked if they had bills that fit the $50 serial number. Eventually, we got to a 7-Eleven. The 7-Eleven had a bill that matched the serial number and printing date. The clerk offered to show us the security footage of who had used it. And booyah! The other 2 witches were right there, red-handed. I took the video and we relaxed as we went home with the $50. The next day, we went into the school police's office. We showed the footage and they said they would handle it. These boys already had been in trouble for smoking and dealing pot, beating up and shaking others, and other cases of theft. This case violated one of their parole requirements. Right now, he's in jail and is waiting trial. I was working at Toys for Tots in the DC area, which is a program the Marine Corps runs every year to gather toys and gifts and distribute them to kids whose Christmas tree would likely disappoint Charlie Brown. They seem to pick those of us who have the Marine look in the casting sense, tall, masculine, and so on, or on a lady's side that peculiar blend of I'll beat you up with one hand while doing my eyeliner with the other. It's as much marketing as anything, especially in the DMV. Point being, we're a bunch of tall, very fit yucks out there in dress blues, smiling and coaxing toys out of people who could have probably saved Toys R Us with petty stock earnings. We look nothing like waitstaff. Myself, 6'1", 210 pounds, and my fellow Marine, 5'4", probably 135 pounds, were assigned to an event at the Smithsonian. Somehow the Corps had managed to get a display and a few donation bins put up, and a black tie, invitation-only shindig surrounding the display of the Hope Diamond, and a bunch of other large hunks of carbon. Personally, I don't understand the obsession with it. It's a large shiny rock, no one is wearing it, it serves no scientific purpose, and it just sits there, so I can look at it. Or something, I don't know. I feel more satisfaction looking at an exceptionally big turd the night after Taco Tuesday. At least I made it myself, often with significant effort and no small amount of regret or self-loathing to provide fuel for the push. Anyway, we're smiling our pearly whites while the various movers and doers shake our hands. Toys on display, posing for the cameras so their constituents, stockholders, and so on can see how kind-hearted they are. The sick thing is how many don't even donate. They just get a photo in front of the pile of toys, says the generosity, pretty much par for the course. The initial wave of donations passes as the event gets down to business. Drinks are passed out, and they start in with the hors d'oeuvres. We're standing there surreptitiously munching and trying not to get those white gloves dirty, when this lady, who's best described as a choppy mixed race female Steve Buscemi, comes toddling up in a dress, waistcoat thing that looked like it was screaming for mercy from the Button Fairy. Fat Steve says, "Hey you two, I'm dry here. Let's get snappy with a refill." Or something like that. We didn't realize she was talking to us, so I only had paid attention. After a second of us not replying, she continued screaming, "Hey, I know you hear me. Get in gear. Flirting time is over." At this point, we realize she meant us. I look over at Pocket, my fellow Marine's nickname, and she looks at me. We look at the lady. It took a second, okay? Finally, I spoke. "Can I help you, ma'am?" "About time. I need a refill. And while you're at it, give me some of those some random munchy things. They stopped bringing them out a few minutes ago. You guys really..." Pocket tells her, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but we don't work here. We're just here with the toys." "I don't care what you think. Get in gear, or I'll have your job. I'll not be talked to by someone like you." She proceeds to toss her empty-ish glass at Pocket, who gets some leftover drips on her blues, but catches it out of reflex. I can see the thunder clouds gathering. A stain like that likely means she is likely looking at a new blues coat, which runs a few $100. Probably a new ribbon setup too. Pocket is Puerto Rican. It has a timbre to match. So I tried to hit the lady off. "Ma'am, we're not wait staff. We're just..." "I don't want to hear your excuses. Do you know who my husband is?" She proceeded to put her finger right under my nose and continue the tirade. Apparently, hubby was a southern senator's main booster/campaign funder. So, said Google, I would see to it I'd be sleeping under newspaper and so on. After about 10 odd seconds of this, we started to draw stairs and some of the staff were starting to head our way. However much I wanted to put this witch in a compliance hold, I could pretty well visualize a CNN article if a male Marine laid hands on a woman in front of all those people, especially a politically connected one. I was sort of at loss. Fortunately for me, I didn't have to make that choice. Pocket made it for me. "Ma'am, you need to calm down. Please take your glass in." She held out the woman's glass to her as she said this. The woman immediately switches her wrist from me to Pocket, and she slaps the glass out of Pocket's hand. I could see Pocket's control wavering, but there wasn't anything for it. Fat Steve bored right in. The critical mistake was to start jabbing Pocket with her finger right in the chest, with each word. "You shut your spick mouse." I cringed visibly at that second to last word, because yeah, I knew exactly what was about to happen. And it did. It's called the Urigatame in Judo. Basically a standing arm lock, and Pocket was a 2-tab black belt. Pocket snatched her arm up, locked her out and slammed her face straight into the wall next to us. Blood, broken nose, drywall, dust, the whole bit. Pocket didn't even say anything, just with grim teeth, smile that says, "I'm going to screw you up so hard, your grandkids will be born with my handprints on their soul." It was awesome, and a little hot to be honest. I, being both a senior Marine and somewhat cooler of temperament, carefully pulled Pocket back. I dare say it was akin to handling a small but very dangerous animal. Fat Steve kind of slides to the floor, actually much quieter now that she's trying to aspirate a mixture of blood and gypsum. Security finally showed up to help, which resulted in them hauling the woman away and taking us to a separate room where we gave our version of things. Security recordings were reviewed, of which there were many, while with the fancy rocks everywhere. And so on. Pocket wanted to press assault charges, and I called a head chef to let them know what happened. They sent a van to pick us and the toys up. Funny enough, it never seemed to make it to the news. I think that, more than anything, saved Pocket. Upon coming back to the main event area to lead the toys and take down the display, we were given a wide berth by many of the upper crusties. I feel compelled to mention the notable exception. This one old lady who came up and asked if she could give Pocket a hug, of all things. Just kinda gave her that grandma-style hug. patted her on the back and took her hands and said, "You know, in my younger years, I would have stomped that whale flat. Wonderfully done, dear." And then wandered off to rejoin the party. It was adorable. This happened several years ago, around 2017. I had left college a year before and already had a job in a small family-owned restaurant and was looking for a second job so that my roommates and I could save up to get our own apartment. We were living with her family at the time, and Ruby was also searching for a job. She was having a harder time of it, due to multiple leg injuries as well as other health complications. But eventually we found a restaurant that was getting ready to open, and it was on the same street as my current job. I picked up 2 applications on my way into work one morning and turned in the filled applications the next day. On my day off, we went in for our interviews, and at the start, the manager said, "This is really just a formality. I'm going to hire you both anyway." We both thought that was a good sign. The new restaurant was going to be a 24-hour diner similar to Denny's and Waffle House, and a lady who gave our interviews used to be a Waffle House manager, but it was 50s themed, and it was across the street from several bars. As the interior of the restaurant was still under construction, no one outside of management and construction crew could be in a restaurant for the next few weeks. And the management told us that they would text us when it was time to start training. Yeah, make that about 2 months before we hear about any sort of training. Already not a good sign. Once training started, it became clear that these people had no clue what the heck they all needed to do. You know how a restaurant is on kitchen nightmares before Gordon Ramsay comes and does an overhaul? Yeah, pick one of the worst restaurants and you're getting close to the crap this place pulled. Can't take any breaks no matter how long your shift is, can't be seen hide the rating in front of customers, and don't get me started on what we found in some of the food. One thing I also forgot to mention earlier, this was a 2-story restaurant. Remember those multiple leg injuries that my roommate has that I mentioned earlier? She made sure that the management knew about it, and they said each time that they wouldn't put her upstairs. That night of the soft opening, it was clear that they had lied because they put her upstairs, meaning that she would have to go up and down the stairs to get the food for her tables multiple times a night with a bad leg. And when she asked to switch sections with another girl, the managers told her to get over it. One of the other waitresses was the manager's niece, and major favoritism was given to her. This girl had no clue what the heck that she needed to do. She kept dropping everything, took forever to key orders in the computer system, and couldn't even mix a basic vanilla milkshake. On the soft opening night, the niece and my roommate were in similar sections, and my roommate would often help out the niece with figuring out the system. Slightly, in the niece's defense, the system was a witch and would repeatedly crash multiple times a day. Well, guess who went to her auntie and said that my roommate had shoved her off of the computers and was stealing her customers. After the soft opening, the managers just seemed to be itching for a reason to fire me and my roommate, but they couldn't because neither of us had any write-ups, and any bullying accusations that the niece tried to pin on us were quickly disproved by other waitresses. And then, the restaurant started opening for real. July 13th, 2017 was when the pot boiled over. This was one of my days off, but Rumi had to work that night. My aunt and uncle from Minnesota were in town that night, and my parents called me and offered to all go to dinner that night at the diner to help support my roommate. Well, the kitchen screws up again, and it's so bad that my uncle asks to speak to the manager. He was very open to my family about what his complaint was. The kitchen had royally screwed up the Reuben sandwich that he had ordered. But the manager told Rumi that my uncle's complaint was about her service. I stayed behind since I was her ride, and fam left. She was in a section downstairs this time. About half an hour after fam leaves, I had a milkshake on hold and looked around the restaurant and realized that I didn't see Rumi. I had seen her a little bit ago leaning against a wall and figuring her leg was bothering her, but I don't see her anymore. So I started looking for someone to ask them for that milkshake. Almost as soon as I realize this, I see her coming down the stairs. She doesn't look towards me, but instead goes behind the milkshake bar, and I hear her politely ask for one of the other waitresses to let her by so that she can get her backpack. As soon as I heard that, my heart dropped. I knew exactly what had happened. Why, she had been upstairs. That's where the office was. I packed up when I saw her go into the restroom, and she came out in her street clothes. We had uniforms at this diner. I was ready to go, but one of the hosts came over to us asking if we were okay. She brushes by him and exits the building, and I simply tell him to cancel the milkshake, and I follow Rumi out of the restaurant. He follows us asking if everything's okay, and Rumi turns around and exclaims, "They fired me because I leaned against the wall for 45 seconds. Oh hell nah. I ask her to wait for me and go back into the building. Fortunately for me, one of the managers is already downstairs, and I call to her to get her attention. Thanks to theater, I know how to project my voice. I make sure that the whole building can hear me when I tell her, because you fired my roommates over an injury that she made sure you were aware of, you can consider my employment terminated as well." Come to find out the whole story from Rumi later. Managers have been creating false write-ups for her and false complaints, like my uncle's, and all sorts of other crap, like the fake bullying charges, to use as an excuse to get rid of her. And now comes the part that you've been waiting for: the revenge. See, Rumi's family knows some people who are pretty high up in the city/state, such as a city sheriff and one of the senators of our state. So one of her family members got her a meeting with said senator, and she told him everything that this diner had done. He gave her the contact information to both the labor board as well as a little company called OSHA. Don't know if you've heard of them. While she got in contact with them, I started a hashtag on Facebook spreading the story and asking my friends to do the same. Whenever she and I were in town together and were having conversations with the locals, anytime that the conversation turned to good restaurants in the area, we made sure to warn them about the treatment that they gave to their staff and asked them to spread their story. It got to the point where Rumi even overheard other people, even lawyers, talking about it on the streets and in a coffee shop that she stayed in while waiting for me to get off of work. My boss and my primary job knew everything that was going on at this diner. Having heard both me and Rumi express our concerns and frustrations, and once we were no longer working there, she and the rest of her staff joined us in cracking jokes and throwing major shade at this diner. I still remember fondly to this day her saying that the drunks are the only reason that place is staying open. Even some of my co-workers were lurking for dirt on this diner. And on November 13, 2017, literally 4 months to the day that they pulled that crap, the cook at my job asked me, "So, did you hear that the diner is closed now?" Wait, what? I had to pull out my phone and check, and sure enough, there it was, in the local news. The diner was closing their doors, effective immediately. The excuse that they gave was management change and that it was only temporary. But to this day, the space that the diner had occupied is still boarded up. Rumi and I went out for celebratory milkshakes that night. We didn't expect that the whole place would be closed down, but we do not regret making those calls or Facebook posts. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.